That's two is.
And now stand by for adventure.
3, 2, 1.
In the exciting story of Manhunt on the Moon. Interplanetary investigator Colonel Bleep and his space deputies, Squeak and Scratch, floated to a stop just above the surface of the moon. They were searching for some trace of the terrible Dr. Destructo among the thousands of crater marks that dotted the strange landscape. To Bleep, it appeared that these craters might have been caused by thousands of meteors crashing down at terrific speed. But many scientists believe the strange markings are the scars of a tremendous bubbling action caused when hot internal gases escaped to the outer surface back when the moon was soft and pliable. Scratch, however, imagined the many craters had been left long ago by violent volcanic eruptions, similar to those the planet Earth had experienced from time to time. Then, something below caught their attention. Glistening in the sun at the very top of Mount Leibniz, the moon's highest visible peak, stood a strange tower. It closely resembled the man-made structure called the Eiffel Tower, which is a familiar landmark on Earth, in the city of Paris. Diving down for a closer look, Bleep and his friends found a huge reflecting mirror with a powerful lens attached to the top of the tower. This had been the moon power device used by Dr. Destructo not long ago to guide the runaway rocket straight down toward 00 Island. While Bleep and Squeak searched for clues, Scratch peered through the powerful lens for a telescopic view of the Earth beyond. But as he looked, he froze with horror. For there, with one foot on South America and the other on South Africa, stood a tremendous black giant. Actually, it was only a highly magnified shadow of the caveman himself, projected nearly 250,000 miles through space by the light of the moon. But the sight was so terrifying, the frightened Scratch fell over backwards and tumbled down to almost certain death on the rocks below. Squeak looked up just in time to see his helpless companion falling straight down upon the puppet himself. Squeak couldn't move or even call for help. He could only cover his eyes and wait for the bone-splintering crash. He waited for the end, and waited, and waited, but nothing happened. Then Squeak opened his eyes just as Scratch gently floated into his arms. For you see, the gravity pull of the moon is only 1/6 as great as Earth, so Scratch almost floated down that great distance like a feather to land unharmed in the arms of little Squeak. Suddenly, Bleep urgently signaled his companions. He had found still another clue. At the base of the tower was a scrap of notebook paper covered with the hasty scrawls of Dr. Destructo's own hand. To the others, it was only a jumble of strange symbols. But to Bleep, this was a flight plan, Destructo's own flight plan. And it told the colonel exactly where this master culprit had gone. It would take courage to follow Destructo now. For Bleep knew this place, knew it too well, and he was sure that fantastic terrors would be waiting out there. And now stand by for adventure.
3, 2, 1.
In the exciting story of Shadows of Suspicion. Bleep, Squeak, and Scratch spent many happy days at their home base on Earth, 00 Island. The colonel kept busy with new experiments in his lab. Scratch spent many happy hours digging away in the garden, and Squeak played with his favorite toy, a little wooden puppet. Squeak loved this toy, perhaps because he himself was made of choice lumber. A block of delicate white pine for his head, and a board of sturdy oak for his buddy. Yes, little Squeak was really a wooden puppet, but few could have guessed that he was anything other than a real and very natural little boy. For he certainly was full of mischief like most real little boys, as his friends knew too well. Bleep still recalls the shock of dashing about for almost an hour, dodging what he believed to be flashing meteorites, only to discover later that little Squeak had slipped a handful of fireflies into the Colonel's helmet, just for fun. Another time, Bleep awoke from a sound sleep to find himself covered with green and yellow spots, a sure sign of Futurian frog pox. But little Squeak knew that the colorful dots on the spaceman's helmet were just dabs of paint, for the puppet had put them there himself, just for fun. But it was poor Scratch, the good-natured caveman who suffered most from this puppet trickery. More than once, his trusty wooden club had been nailed to the floor. And who can recall how many times a scrumptious coconut pie had a hidden balloon inside, just waiting for poor Scratch's knife or fork. Squeak's favorite prank, however, was making shadow pictures on the wall by holding his fingers in front of a bright candle. He would create the shadow of a wolf, then signal for help, and Scratch would dash to the rescue, only to find the puppet rocking with laughter at his joke. The caveman had been fooled by Squeak's shadow pictures of a giant crab, a monstrous crocodile, and a ferocious ostrich. At last, Scratch had vowed never to be tricked again. Then, one day, it happened. Bleep had blasted off for a closer look at a storm cloud approaching the island. Scratch was inside his cave, carving a new wooden club, and Squeak was fishing in the brook by the waterfall. At the first raindrop, Squeak dashed for the nearby shelter of Scratch's cave. Now, no one had noticed that a giant tropical spider had just spun its huge web across the cave entrance, and poor Squeak ran smack into this deadly trap. Scratch looked towards the doorway to see the puppet snared in the giant web, but as he watched, the stormy sky outside made his poor struggling friend look like just another of Squeak's own shadow tricks. And Scratch returned to his club carving, determined not to be fooled again, and never dreaming that his little friend was really in trouble this time. Poor Squeak shook with terror as the giant spider appeared, ready to devour him. It would be all over in a flash. And it was, but the flash was from a powerful bolt of Bleep's atomic energy. Yes, the Colonel had returned just in time to save the puppet. And so a very frightened Squeak, now safe in the arms of his friends, promised faithfully never to call for help unless he was in honest-to-goodness real trouble. For now he knows that a foolish trick can sometimes cost a life. And now, stand by for adventure.
3, 2, 1.
In the exciting story of Squeak and the Terrible Termite. In his cave on 00 Island, Scratch awoke each morning just as the first sunbeam peeked through. He would yawn, then reach for his trusty wooden club to be sure it was ready for the day's adventures. Colonel Bleep, in his laboratory, was up early, just in time to silence that noisy bird in the wooden clock before it could finish its morning call. Because in his little dream house, Squeak would still be sound asleep in his cozy bed. This morning, however, things began in a very different way. When Scratch yawned and reached for his wooden club, it was missing. Only a few crumbs of sawdust remained. When Bleep got up to silence the cuckoo clock, something was very wrong indeed. Only the metal springs, gears, and numerals were left. Every wooden part of that clock had vanished, even the cuckoo. Bleep and Scratch rushed to awaken Squeak, but the little puppet's bed was empty, and Squeak himself was nowhere to be found. The only clue was a trail of unusual footprints, which Bleep recognized immediately. Only yesterday in his lab, the Colonel had seen those very same footprints, only much smaller in size. Following the tracks, he had discovered a tiny wood-eating insect called a termite. But Bleep was amazed to find that this particular termite had traces of interplanetary wood dust on its wings. Something strange was going on. Somehow, by some strange power, a tiny termite had grown overnight into a giant monster. There was no doubt. A wood-eating monster of tremendous size was on the loose. Poor Squeak, the little wooden puppet, had been captured by a giant termite. A terrible termite. The Colonel sped into action. Using futonic energy, he quickly made for Scratch a brand new club. Not of wood, but of solid lead, one of the heaviest, most malleable metals commonly used by man. Thus armed, Bleep and Scratch hurriedly followed the footprints to rescue their little friend. Suddenly, they were upon him. There was the great insect sprinkling salt on the poor wooden puppet, who lay bound on a huge platter. This was a time for quick thinking and fast action. With caveman strength, Scratch molded his heavy but malleable metal club into a statue that looked exactly like Squeak. And as the termite turned to put away the salt, Scratch quickly substituted the metal statue for the real puppet. And at the same time, Bleep charged the statue with a bolt of futonic lightning. Then the terrible termite turned, and in one hungry gulp, swallowed the charged statue. With a howl of pain, the monster leaped into the sea to cool off. But the weight of that heavy metal statue pulled him down, 50 fathoms under. So once again, peace was restored to 00 Island. And while Scratch fashioned a new wooden club, and Colonel Bleep repaired the cuckoo clock, little Squeak snoozed soundly in his cozy little bed, tired from his exciting adventure and completely unaware that even greater danger lay ahead. And now stand by for adventure.
3, 2, 1.
In the exciting story of Test of Friendship. Ordinarily, Squeak the puppet and Scratch the caveman were the very best of friends. It was Scratch who had carved Squeak's favorite toy, a wonderful wooden hobby horse, and Squeak was forever surprising his caveman buddy with a scrumptious coconut pie. Together, as space deputies in Colonel Bleep's scooter squadron, they shared many thrilling adventures as they fought to maintain right and justice throughout the vast galaxies of the universe. Yes, Squeak and Scratch were more than just good friends. They were almost like brothers. Until today, like a bolt from the blue, the Daily Mail rocket arrived with a special delivery message from the Futurian High Command. A message which threatened to shatter forever this wonderful friendship. To Colonel Bleep, Commander, 00 Island. Squeak and Scratch are tied for award as Space Deputy of the Year. You must choose the winner by dawn tomorrow. Space Deputy of the Year? This is important, for the one cadet chosen each year wins his own personal merit flag to prove that he is the finest space deputy of them all. There is no friendship now. Squeak knows if it wasn't for Scratch, the winner's flag would be his. And the caveman knows
only Squeak stands in the way of his victory. This is the showdown. There can be only one winner, and it's gonna be me. For the rest of the day, neither the puppet nor the caveman have one single word to say to one another. That night, little Squeak lay awake, recalling his many adventures of the past year. There was that time on Jupiter's 12th moon when he and Bleep were captured by Dr. Destructo's giant vampire bat. But wait, it was Scratch and his mighty super bird who saved them from a terrible fate. Oh, well, what about the time he was frozen in solid ice by the terrible ice demons of Saturn? Why, again, it was Scratch who came to the rescue with an army of marching penguins. And when Black Patch forced him to walk the plank, it was Scratch who routed the pirate band with a pilgrim blunderbuss. Maybe Scratch is the one who deserves to win the merit flag after all. Meanwhile, in his darkened cave, Scratch is thinking of his year's adventures. Could he ever forget the time he was swallowed alive by a giant sea serpent? Say, come to think of it, it was little Squeak who was first to the rescue. And that day on the moon when the caveman slipped and fell from Destructo's giant observation tower. Who saved him then? Why, his puppet pal. And who could have shown more courage and valor than little Squeak when he faced the powerful Black Knight alone on the field of battle? It was hard to believe, but perhaps Squeak should be chosen Space Deputy of the Year. At dawn the next morning, Bleep found 2 letters under his door. One from Squeak and one from Scratch. The puppet had written, Scratch deserves to win. And the caveman had written, Squeak deserves to win. It's time to announce the winner. Squeak and Scratch snap to attention. Then the space cadets blink in surprise. For instead of a name on the flag of honor, there is only a huge letter S. But does this initial S stand for Squeak or Scratch? No one knows, not even Colonel Bleep. For how could anyone choose just one winner from 2 such brave and unselfish cadets? And so it was that the caveman and the puppet shared the winner's flag. And once again, Squeak and Scratch were more than just good friends. They were almost like brothers. And now stand by for adventure.
3, 2, 1.
In the exciting story of the prehistoric present. The morning sun beamed down on the entrance of the cave home of Scratch, the world's only living caveman. Scratch, as you know, fell asleep several thousand years ago, and probably would have been sleeping yet. But the first atomic test explosion blew him right out of the past and into the present. And now, with his friends, Colonel Bleep and little Squeak, the caveman's life is filled with exciting adventures, wonderful adventures, like the time Scratch smelled smoke and saw a fiery glow inside his cave. He dashed inside to find Squeak with a giant birthday cake, all aglow with candles,
just for Scratch. The happy caveman jumped for joy and made a very special wish when he blew out all the candles. And then Scratch felt sad, and big tears dripped from his eyes, for he felt sure that his birthday wish could never, ever possibly come true. For Scratch had wished to return once again to his prehistoric past, to play again with Dimples, his lovable pet dinosaur. Yes, Scratch missed Dimples very much, and now he would never see her again. But to Colonel Bleep, nothing seems impossible, and so the spaceman's birthday gift to Scratch was a golden key. The key to Scratch's wish come true, for this was the key that operated Colonel Bleep's Futomic Time Transformer, that fantastic invention which made it possible to transport anything or anybody anywhere in time or space. Quickly, the caveman hopped aboard, and Bleep adjusted the time controls to allow Scratch to visit for 1 hour with Dimples back thousands of years in the past. Squeak turned the golden key as Scratch waved farewell. Then the whole contraption suddenly vanished as it raced backwards, carrying the caveman through time. Then suddenly, there he was, back home again with Mama Scratch, Papa Scratch, and Dimples. Dear old Dimples, Scratch's pet dinosaur. Meanwhile, back in the present, Bleep and Squeak watched the dials and signals of the Futomic Time Transformer as the minutes ticked by. The hand of the clock was rapidly approaching the time for Scratch's scheduled return. There's the signal. Now Bleep throws the reverse control switch. But Scratch is having such a wonderful time, he forgets to climb aboard, and the machine returns empty. Quickly, the Colonel sends it racing back. And again it returns, but this time with Dimples. Now Bleep is worried, for only enough Futomic power remains in the machine for one more try. Scratch must come back this time, or he will be left forever in the past. Once again, Bleep throws the switch. And just in time, Scratch jumps aboard the Futomic transport, and now he's really on his way back. But wait, the power's beginning to fade, and the years are clicking off slower and slower, until finally, the machine stops dead, somewhere in the past century. Poor Scratch is stuck back in the 1800s. Now he'll never get back. But wait, what's that strange noise? And that, it's getting louder and louder, closer and closer. But what can it be? Why, it's Scratch, riding back from the 19th century in an early automobile, towing the rundown Futomic Time Transformer behind him. And so Scratch had a wonderful birthday. And now he's back with his friends again. You can just bet that no one else in the whole wide world ever got a pet dinosaur for a present. Yes, it's fun to dream about the past, but for real fun, there's no time like the present.